Hello everybody and welcome back for another Scrapbook Pal video. This is Cassie. I'm going to be making a Thinking of You card, and so let's talk about the products we're going to be using. We're going to be using the Avery Elle Astronauts stamp set with the matching die. And we're also going to be using the Avery Elle Speech Bubbles with their matching dies as well. I just love these two sets, and I love how those speech bubbles can go with just about any one of the sets. I want to make an alcohol ink background for you, so we're going to use some Yupo paper. We're also going to be using two of the brand new alcohol inks that are new to Ranger, Vineyard and Cobalt. We're going to be using some alcohol blending solution, and we're also going to be using this air blower. Now this is brand new, and I think it's a pretty cool tool. Before we get started on our background, just a little disclaimer, make sure that you are in a very well ventilated area. I've started by putting some alcohol blending solution all over that background. Clearly, I have no rhyme or reason to how I am doing this, and I just put some of the ink down on there as well. I'm going to use the ink blower to move those inks around, and then I'll keep coming in with some of that solution. The nice thing about using Yupo paper, which is just a synthetic plastic type paper, is that those alcohol inks just sit on the top. And if you don't like what you see, you can reactivate it with that blending solution. And so that is something that's pretty nice. But one of my favorite things to do is just sit and play with the alcohol inks and just kind of see what colors can go together, see how you can get those things to blend around and manipulate your backgrounds. And it's neat because you'll never really get the same thing. I did decide to bring in one of the alloys. This is brand new as well, and this is the sterling alloy. And so all I did was just put some dots of that around, and then I brought in some more of that blending solution, and then the air blower. And then where I don't, if I want to bring in some more color, I will bring in more color. That's the really cool thing about alcohol inks, is that they move whatever color is next to them. And so they kind of just take over wherever they are, which is, I don't know, it's pretty cool. So that's all I'm doing, is going back and forth with this background, and just until I am happy with how that looks, I'm just going to keep spritzing. And then I'm going to bring it up to the camera to show you. It does have lots of shine. It's still a little bit wet, a little tacky, so we'll set that off to the side to dry while we do our stamping. I'll grab in the speech bubbles, just the two speech bubbles from the speech bubbles stamp set, and then I'm going to bring in the three astronauts. I put these in my MISTI because I wanted to make sure that I was able to stamp them a couple times if I needed to. So I'm going to bring out some Memento Tuxedo black ink, which is my favorite ink for Copic coloring. And then I'll close the door of the MISTI and stamp those down. These were brand new stamps, so I definitely needed to stamp them twice to make sure that I had a good crisp image, and the MISTI helps with that. Then I'm going to bring in the words that I want inside the speech bubble, and it's interesting because they look like they barely fit, but they fit perfectly. And so then I'll just rub those with my hand to condition them just a little bit, and then close the door of the MISTI, and we've got both of our speech bubbles ready to go. For our coloring, I'm going to bring in, I'll show them up on the screen here, but I'm going to bring in some E99 for his face, this first astronaut, and I'm going to color them each a little bit differently. So we've got E99, and then I'm going to come in with some E37, which is the sepia, just for some darker color, and then I'll shade that out with the E99, which was the baked clay. For his hair, we're using E49, which is dark brown. And then we'll move on to the next little guy. So we're going to start off with some E50 for his lightest skin tone. It's very, very light. And then we'll bring in the E1 or E31. We'll blend that out with the E50. And then for his hair, we're using E08. So he's going to be a little redhead. And then for our last little guy, we're going to have some E13. That'll be his first shade, which is that light suntan. And we'll do the same thing that we did for the other three. We'll start with that first shade, then we'll come in with E15, which is a dark suntan, and then shade that out with the E13 again. And then for his hair, we are using E89, which is called pecan. I'm going to color all the astronauts the same. Their little outfits are all going to be using the toner gray colors. So I'm using toner gray 1, toner gray 3, and toner gray 5. So we'll put a light wash of color down all over his little outfit. And then we'll bring in some of the tea 3 for some shadowing and shading. I just thought this was perfect. I was very excited to get this stamp set and to play with it because I live in Huntsville, Alabama, and if you don't know, which I didn't know, Huntsville, Alabama is actually called Rocket City. So this is the home of Space Camp, and it also is the home of where they developed the rocket to send us to the moon. How cool is that? And so, yeah, it's a big deal around here. Rocket City, Space Camp, all that jazz, and we like our little town. I brought in some R24 for his little dots, which is called Prawn, and then now we're going to bring in the matching dies for all those pieces, and we'll tack those down with a little bit of purple tape, and then run that through our die cutting machine, and then we'll set those off to the side. My background is dry, so I'm going to trim it down just a little bit because those Yupo papers are 5x7, I believe. So I obviously want this to fit on an A2 size card. So I've trimmed that down to be actually 4 inches by 5.5 inches. So it's going to go top to bottom, but I'm going to have a little border on one of the sides. I wanted these guys to not just look like they're floating, so I did stamp out the little swirl, which would be their, like, I guess their air connector or whatever connects them to the shuttle. And I'm going to run that through my die cutting machine as well for all 3 of those. So next we are going to get our card base ready. So I just have some white cardstock that I cut down to 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches, and I'm scoring that at 4.25 inches with my little score buddy. And then it'll be ready to go. So before I put it on there, obviously this is a night sky. That's what I was going for. And so I'm going to grab my number 8 Sakura Jelly Roll pen, and I'm just going to put a few stars on there, just on that background. Now, for whatever reason, the alcohol ink, every time I do it anyway, I think it's when I use purples and blues and stuff, but mostly purples, it sort of changes the color of my dots. It almost makes them like it like absorbs a little bit of that color, which isn't super obvious, but the white dots won't be quite as white. So if you have something different and it works better, let me know. So, but even with splatter, I have that issue. But I'm just going all over that background, trying to make it look even more like a night sky. And then we'll set that off to the side to dry, and we will work on the inside of our card. But before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and put down some foam tape on the back of those. Those are the 3D foam squares by Scrapbook Adhesives. I love these little dots. They work great and get into the little nooks and crannies. I'm going to use some Avery Elle glue, a lot of Avery Elle glue on that one because I squeezed too hard, just to adhere my speech bubble to the inside of my card. So I'm wiping some of that away with my fingers, and then I'll take the excess and I'll put it on this little guy. So note to self, do not squeeze your bottle. The glue will come out. But this glue is a great glue. And I like the little container. And then we'll put little dots of glue on our little, I don't even know what you call that. I'm sure someone knows what that's called. The little connector. And then we'll trim off the excess. And then we'll get ready to start working on our panel. So that's pretty much dry now. So I'm going to kind of place where I want my pieces. And once I have that ready, I will adhere down our little connectors with some glue. Remember, we have foam tape on the back of our little guy. And then we'll do the same thing with the other connector on the other side. I kind of want these to look like they're coming off the side so that they just aren't like, you know, something else that's floating out there, so that they have their little ships next to them or something. And then when I'm ready, I'll flip those over and cut off the excess, which isn't a whole lot, it's just a little something. And then we'll start peeling off our release paper on our foam squares. And then we'll tack that little guy down. But yeah, I mean, we moved to Huntsville a little over a year ago, so I'm still learning lots about this area, but it's a neat little area. Tons of engineers, and you know, just a pretty area too, because it's North Alabama. Now we're going to stick our panel down with more of that Avery Elle glue, and we're going to kind of focus it more to the left-hand side so that we have a nice white border on the right-hand side. And then when that is done, that's going to finish off our whole card. I love how this turned out. It's fairly simple, but that background is just so fun and has this nice little night sky. So if you liked this video, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And as always, I will see you very soon in my next video. Bye, everybody.